There's a former Baylor football player who was taken in the 2022 draft kind of early in a spot where some of the fans for his new team may not be the most excited, but he might just be the best Baylor Bear next season, even as a rookie. But he's somebody that many Bear fans also didn't talk about when he was in the green and gold. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Drake Toll here with Locked On Baylor, bringing you all things Baylor sports and thanking you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. Again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the summer schedule the next 2 months. We've kind of hit the off season of Baylor sports, and the baseball coaching search continues. We'll keep you updated on that. But on today's show, there is a guy by the name of J.T. Woods that I feel like was almost, not even almost, he was underappreciated as a Baylor Bear. And you may be saying like, oh, I loved J.T. Woods, right? I always really thought he was a great guy and a wonderful football player. And yes, all those things are true. But when you think back about when folks talk about the stars, right, of the Baylor defense last season, or even the Baylor football team, you mentioned Terrel and you mentioned Jalen Pitre, and you go to Tyquan Thornton and Treston Ebner, and you go to Gary Bohannon, and you're naming, Connor Galvin, the offensive lineman. It feels like J.T. Woods kind of gets lost in a stacked amount of players who, many of which, went lower than him in the draft. And I've always wondered why. Why, and maybe you can push back and say that I'm wrong, has J.T. Woods gone vaguely overlooked during his time at Baylor and now with the Chargers as well in L.A.? It feels like there are a lot of fans who are just not sure about what they're going to get in this pick. In the NFL Draft Combine, he runs a 4.36, ends up going in the third round of the Chargers as well, has a wonderful pedigree when it comes to the speed, really good ball hawk skills, can get to the football quick. And if you remember the Texas State game last season, you didn't see it. None of us did because that broadcast was so bad. But J.T. Woods had an interception and a pick six in that game to help Baylor win a game that ended up being pretty tightly contested. And then later on in the year had his best game, I would argue, his best game against Ole Miss. We had 2 interceptions against the Rebels, one including against Matt Corral. In total, in his senior season, had 44 solo tackles, 57 total tackles. He had 2 sacks in his career. They came his freshman and his sophomore season, not his senior, but he had pretty solid stats, was a consistent guy who played in 13 games his sophomore year, 10 games freshman year, 13 his sophomore, 9 in that shortened COVID season, and then all 14 games for Baylor his senior season. So what was it? What was it that made J.T. Woods kind of an overlooked guy for Baylor's program? And was it the star-studded cast of Baylor athletes last season? You heard people talk a lot about Jaron McVay after the McPlay, right? That play kind of solidified him as the guy for Baylor last season. You'd hear your Al Walcott, your Raleigh Tejada. It even feel like those guys were more buzz names than J.T. Woods. So I think it shocked a lot of Baylor fans, too, when he went off the board in the third round of the San Diego Chargers, and even more so when he ran the 4.36 at the NFL Combine and turned heads of everybody that ended up helping him get that third-round pick. But a consistent player at Baylor, and I'll say this, one of the best minds that I've been around in sports media. From a player's standpoint, there are very few guys who are better than J.T. Woods when you put him behind a microphone and ask him a question. A lot like Dave Aranda in how methodical, thoughtful, deep he gives answers. J.T. Woods has just got it. There are those people that have it, and whatever it is, he has it. Unbelievable interview skills, unbelievable people skills, just a great guy in general that's going to bring a locker room together, not only at Baylor where he did, but also for the Chargers as well. And he deserves that respect. So I joined Locked On Chargers to talk about J.T. Woods and what he brings to the table. A couple segments here. We talk all things J.T. Woods, what he'll do with the Chargers, and how I truly do, with the way that he scored at the NFL Combine. The fact that he went in the third round of the draft, which I think shocked a lot of people, myself included. And the fact that, Chargers fans may not be as high on him as they are some of those other players. Typically a great villain origin story for a guy to step up and be unbelievable. And I think J.T. Woods can be that guy from day one, from jump. In the NFL, one of the most, how are we going to put this? One of the positions with the most parity in it is the secondary, giving JT Woods kind of the Rolodex opportunity to throw his name in that hat as one of the guys that gets playing time with the Chargers. And that's going to go a long way for him, and why I think he could end up being one of the best Baylor rookies next season and have a long career in the NFL too. Maybe it takes him a bit to adjust, but I like JT Woods a lot. Keep your eye out for him being that guy from Baylor as a rookie next season. And get ready for all things JT Woods with the guys at Locked On Chargers. But first, I got to tell you about BetOnline. Right now, I'm in Cape Cod. We see the new little setup. We're working out some different little setups here at Cape Cod. And the Boston Celtics are playing the Warriors right now in the NBA Finals. Not a big NBA guy, but you kind of have to be when you're in the Boston area. Everybody here is watching and waiting. If Boston wins, I'm rooting for them, because if they win, I get to go to an NBA parade. How cool is that? And right now, you can also root for them monetarily. You go to BetOnline, betonline.net, your number one source for all betting stats and sports info. Find all of the sports development news, odds, including this year's championship, NHL, hockey conference finals, Major League Baseball. You got MMA, UFC, all that jazz. BetOnline, where the game starts. And, I've told you about it before. I'll tell you about it again. Rock Auto. My car's not fixed. I have now zip-tied the front of my car to itself. It's not fixed yet, which is a shame. It's a shame. But it's because I haven't gone to Rock Auto. I'm not doing what I keep telling you to do because it's convenient. It's convenient. And I don't know why. I should listen to myself at some point, because Rock Auto right now has, time, money saving capabilities to the tune of 50%, even 75, 100% off some of the things that you'll get. 100% off? No. 100% less than some of the things you'll get from local department store, the chain store. Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 at a chain store, $216 at Rock Auto. Way cheaper. It's like going to, cheapflights.com, getting the cheapest flight on there, but it's quality. This isn't Spirit. It's not Frontier. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could never need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore. Easy to use website, rockauto.com. When you say that, how did you hear about us? Put Locked On so they know that we sent you. As Rock Auto, amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com.
All right, guys. Well, this is the guest we are very, very excited to bring on. We have the host of Locked On Baylor, a ton of great college shows on the Locked On Podcast Network. But today we have an expert in all things JT Woods and that great Baylor defense. So we're bringing on Drake Toll, the host of the Locked On Baylor podcast, also does Sick'em 365. You can find him there. You can find him on Twitter at Drake C. Toll. But Drake, thanks so much for coming on the show today, man. We're excited to talk about the Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah, guys, absolute pleasure. It is 10 o'clock, 10:07 local time, which is like 3 in the afternoon for a college kid. So you catch me like right in my energetic swing. I'll be out for another seven hours, and always excited to talk Baylor football as well. So pleasure coming on and excited.
Yeah, man, for sure. The college life kid, we were talking tuition, and I mean, good luck to you, sir. But we're here today to talk about JT Woods, the Chargers safety. They took him in the third round. We're pretty excited about him, a guy that I think was really rising up the draft boards. Great Senior Bowl performance, did a lot of great things in the offseason circuit. Run a 4.36 is always going to help your cause. But I know a lot of Charger fans have watched the highlight tape, right? They've seen all the interceptions that he brings to the table. But what can you tell us about what he brings and how he handles himself off the field?
Yeah, first, from a tuition standpoint, I wish I had JT Woods money. I'll throw that out there. The guy's got the bag now. I'll say this, and here's where I kind of want to start with a guy like JT Woods. Had you asked me about Jalen Pitre or Terrel Bernard, a couple of the buzzword guys that came out of Baylor's program, Tyquan Thornton being another one, I could give certain anecdotes, and this guy played that well on the field, yada, yada. For JT Woods is a guy that I've been around quite a bit, somebody who I've worked with his girlfriend too, and so kind of gotten to see like the really behind the scenes of JT Woods. And I don't think, and this is not, look, you can ask a beat writer to come on your show and talk about some player that got drafted by your team, and they can blow hot air up your whatever, as much as they want to, but this is a guy that out of this draft class, I have not seen someone else from the Baylor realm, or really pretty much across draft day or the draft weekend, that has this kind of level-headedness, wherewithal, and maturity off the field. Now, granted, do you want the first thing someone says about your newly drafted player to be, he's great off the field, right?
No.
It feels like a cop-out, right?
Sure.
But not only is he elite on the field, exactly. This guy is going to walk into a locker room day one And there are those rookies that automatically you can pick on, right? But this dude is a grinder. Walks into the weight room day
Love
one,
that.
and you feel it. Doesn't say a word, just gets stuff done. And when he does open his mouth, you think, dang, that was impressive. I can't tell you how many press conferences I've been in where I've thought, I am in awe of this person's mind. And that doesn't happen that often with college athletes, right? Most of these guys are here not necessarily for the education. They're just trying to play football and make it to the league.
Yeah.
And not to say JT Woods wasn't in the boat of trying to make it to the league, and now he has, but anytime you did hear him talk, you're thinking, I somehow feel dumber now because of how smart this guy is. So not only do you get that, you also get a player who had 6 interceptions last season, near the top of the FBS, led the Big 12 as well. So he's got a ball hawk mentality, really, really good at reading the quarterback's eyes. He's not a perfect athlete, not a perfect safety, but not the best even in a one high look. You start getting really technical, but still, he's going to add an unbelievable presence in the locker room, which is huge for a lot of these guys. You don't want the cocky, rookie that comes in day one and just blows the whole place up.
Sure.
This dude's going to mesh a group of rookies for the Chargers. And not only that, be really good at his position because he showed he can track the football so well and could end up being elite at his position. Although I wouldn't say he's elite right now.
Well, hey, I mean, you kind of segued beautifully into the next question because, one of the big reasons why the Chargers took JT Woods was because of those 9 interceptions that he accumulated through his college career. How big was that for Baylor's defense to have a guy on the back end who was always a threat to take the ball away?
Well, yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge, especially in the Big 12 where you have a lot of quarterbacks that are trying to air it out. What I love about guys that are coming from the Big 12, look at Xavier Howard, right, from Miami, that granted different position, but he's coming from a Baylor defense. You think, all right, he was decent in college, but you're seeing a guy who got a lot of experience against quarterbacks that are uncorking the football.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where JT Woods is coming from, a Big 12 that is still pretty pass-oriented, spread the football out, let it fly. So Woods has gotten to see that aspect. Now, granted, that means, I think, to me, a bigger adjustment when you get to the NFL and realize, hey, not everybody's throwing it 50 yards every play, and you got to really hone it in. And I think that's where he's going to struggle from a tackling standpoint early on. But when you got a guy who had 6 interceptions last season, in a year in college football where not that many, when I read that, it was like tied for top in the FBS with only 6. Not a great year for interceptions, I guess, in the FBS last season, but even still, that threat is right there. And when you have a safety that has the size of JT Woods, that has the lateral quickness of JT Woods, that is circled on a scouting report, that's going to help you no matter who you're going against, especially in the Big 12. So certainly without JT Woods last season, I'll say this. Let me say this. The amount of close games Baylor was in, the amount of times JT Woods' interceptions came at clutch moments, he could swing 2 wins off of Baylor's schedule, and maybe they go 10-4 instead of 12-2 if you're missing one JT Woods.
Yeah, and that was actually the next thing I had was just like, I know a lot of people see the interceptions, and I mean, it tells part of the story for sure, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And for the Chargers specifically, they've had so many moments in these games, especially when you're in the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes and now Russell Wilson, right? And all these great players. You just sometimes the defense isn't going to go the way you want to. Sometimes you're going to give up 30, right? But you just need that dude that can make that one play to change the game and to change your fortunes in a close game. And like you said, I mean, that for the Baylor, Bears could have been the difference between a championship and the Big 12 last year. And that's what I was going to say is it's not even just the interceptions, fumble recoveries. Like this dude just seemed to come up clutch in those big moments.
He's got a really, really good nose for the football. And again, I think that's a blanket statement that a lot of people throw out about a lot of freaking players.
Sure.
But this is a guy that when you look at from a safety spot pulling 6 interceptions, it's because he's watching the quarterback's eyes and he's ready for where the ball goes next. Not only that, he's a very risky tackler. In that's why you'll see some forced fumbles from JT Woods because he could lay the wood, but on the flip side of that coin, he could try to lay the wood and get laid out himself when some big wide receiver comes across the middle and there's a broken tackle on a touchdown given up. He's not infallible, right? And so you take that into account, but even still, he's got this innate ability to find where the football goes, and those guys impress the hell out of me on a football field. Can I say hell? I'm a Baylor. We only get one per semester at Baylor in private Baptist. But there are those guys that how in the middle of a football play can you watch this dude's eyes from 30 yards away and just know where he's going with the football? And when you see the interceptions that JT Woods has and you really analyze them, you think, That's freaking impressive. So, granted, the NFL is a whole different ballgame, but having those kind of ball hawk skills already, I think are pretty key. And then you get to do that in the NFL, where you have coaches who are paid exponentially more dollars to make you exponentially better at that one thing. I think there's a pretty high ceiling for a guy like JT Woods when it comes to being a game changer in that part of the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, briefly as far as some of the flaws, that JT Woods has. But as a third-round pick, there's no surprise that, he has some things that he needs to work on, just like every other college prospect. But what do you think he needs to improve on while he makes that jump into the NFL?
Yeah, I think number one thing for me would be tackling for sure. I think it would certainly be again, he's trying to go for the big hit, or he'll try to go for which you're a safety. Most of the time, if you're the one making the tackle, things have probably not gone that well for every guy in front of you. You're pretty much the last line of defense, right?
Right.
So
that's true.
You can say that
and
about
he has
most.
such a quick trigger too. He gets going quickly.
Absolutely. And that's one of those things that there are those guys that every now and then think they're a little bit quicker than they actually are. Granted, he's got 4.36 speed. He's a really fast guy, but David, I'll say it till I die. There's a difference between quickness and speed. It sounds weird, but it's true. There is a big difference. He is not the quickest guy, and that is on a lot of it. When you look at the breakdown analysis of JT Woods on most websites, they say the same thing. He's not the quickest guy. Fast, but just immediate reaction quickness, not really there. And I think that's going to hurt him from a tackling standpoint. But outside of that, I'd say, on a deep ball, he's got a tendency to be a little bit slower off the second step. So if you got a receiver that's got what do the kids say, a hezzy now, right? That's what they're saying. And then the receiver, if you got somebody going deep, he can get lost in space every now and then. So I think it's one of the big things, just like can lose track of a deep ball. And then I think he's still kind of, I don't want to say one-dimensional when it comes to man or zone, but definitely I see a pretty significant difference in him being much better in a zone, which again is the case for most guys in this spot. But yeah, you're looking at a third-round safety. He's much better in a zone, and that's something that could also be developed.
Yeah, and I mean, it works for what the Chargers do defensively, right? And having a cover two shell and him only having to cover half of the field is something that he can definitely do with that speed, which we're going to get more into. But I also think, one of the things with the tackling is it was said early on with Derwin James, who did a lot of those same things, like 100% all the time. He's going to go full throttle to try to make a tackle, but you'd rather rein a dude in than have to make them want to tackle to begin with. And I'm sure you've seen in the Big 12 a ton of secondary players that would much rather not want to tackle dudes. And that doesn't seem like it's an issue with JT Woods or Jalen Pitre for that matter. But we're going to get more into this new safety for the Chargers, the Heartbreak Kid, and what we're excited to see from him next season with Drake Toll coming up right after this.
Hey there, popping in there to tell you about Built Bar. I have told you before, I will tell you again. Built Bar, from the brownie batter puffs to the birthday cake puffs to all the way around a caramel brownie Built Bar. I am on a Built Bar kick right now. Again, I started at Locked On not that long ago, and I've already just mind-blowing how good this stuff is and how healthy it is too. You never know, right? You have, throw the dessert away, because you have 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. 4 grams of sugar. That's how many downs Baylor stopped Oklahoma State to win a Big 12 championship at the end. I would replace a regular brownie with Built Bar's caramel brownie bar so easily, because it's so much more healthy and it tastes pretty much the exact same, because they use 100% real chocolate, like actual real chocolate. Built for health, though. Chocolate built for health. I know it sounds like a weird dichotomy, but it works. There are millions of reasons you should try Built Bar, but for now, let's just say the caramel brownie will rock your world. Not an understatement. Caramel brownie. Go try that one. You already had the birthday cake. You already had the brownie, batter or whatever. Yeah. Now it's the caramel brownie. Try that one. I know you're going to love it. With Built, it's tasty, new, healthy. Go to Built.com. Box of caramel brownie bars now. Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
All right, we are back here with the host of the Locked On Baylor show, Drake Toll, on with us, coming in from his hard college life, paying a ton of tuition and barely getting any sleep. I know we all can remember that a little bit, but lucky enough to come on here and bring, honestly, some really, really good energy to the show and getting us excited about JT Woods, the Chargers' third-round pick this year. But we talked a little bit about the speed, and there is a difference between quick and being fast, right? But when you get to the NFL level, I mean, and you run a 4.36, that's going to be something that shoots you up boards just on its own, just because you have that ability. And NFL coaches will say to themselves, I can work with that. Give me that, right? And most of them, you're just going off the traits and not getting the kind of ball production that someone like JT Woods had over the last couple of years, right? Because he has the production and he has the numbers that you want to see from the combine and things like that. But how impressed were you with just some of those plays where like he's just covering an amount of space that you don't really see covered?
Yeah, you definitely see 4.36 in motion at multiple times on the field with JT Woods. And a guy with that kind of speed, I'll say this, when he graded at the combine, or tested, I should say, in the 40 at 4.36, I think I was a little shocked. Honestly, I think most Baylor fans were like, okay, we knew you were fast, but that's
Sure.
really, really fast.
Different level, yeah.
So I think that showed a lot about not only how well JT Woods had been playing at Baylor, but also the work that he put into the NFL combine. I think that he really started to take advice from NFL scouts and try to tailor his game to a more NFL style and try to build that speed. Now, granted, not to say he wasn't fast. I think that was a point of focus, though, going into the NFL combine. So
Sure.
I'll say looking at his speed in motion for Baylor last season was big. And I'll say why I feel like I noticed it most. You had guys out there that were quick. You know, Tyquan Thornton and Kalen Barnes are both guys who had unbelievable 40-yard dashes.
Crazy.
But,
yeah.
right, Dave Aranda, though, is not building his defense around, can we be the fastest? It's
Sure.
can we be that big, hard-nosed SEC style? Like, I want my middle linebacker to look like a defensive tackle kind of defense for Dave Aranda.
I love that.
And when you toss JT Woods out there who's running all over the field, you think, that's freaking big. And let me say this, too. Yeah, Daniel, David, I don't know how deep I can get on this rabbit hole. Baylor did not have the best cornerbacks in the world last year. That was the one part of the field that was like, oh, God, please don't throw a deep ball. None of you. Any opposing team, just don't throw a deep ball because it's going to go well for you. And the guy that was there to clean it up was JT Woods. He had to be a cleanup man a lot because Baylor's corners just weren't at the Dave Aranda level or where he wants them to be. So that speed was in action more than it probably should have been, just for fact of the corners not being as good as they should have been.
Yeah, I mean, hey, JT Woods started a majority of the games for Baylor over the last 2 seasons, and he played pretty well. But was there a specific play or game where you kind of realized that this guy is definitely going to take his game to the next level?
I think it's definitely this past season where it felt like the progression of JT Woods. You know, he had 3 picks in the shortened COVID year, and so who knows if he even boosts those stats in a full season. I mean, that's the question mark for everybody.
Yeah.
But last season, it felt like JT Woods kind of came into his own more or less in a fashion of he had been at Baylor and had been making plays since his freshman year. I mean, this was a name that you're like, those guys that you see they pop up on a few years later. You're like, oh, that guy's still here. That was kind of a JT Woods fashion in 2021. So, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I'd say there was a singular game or moment where I just thought JT Woods is the truth. Looking at last year, I would say the one thing that jumps off the page to me, and this is where I'll camp out in this question. Sorry, I know I'm rambling.
Oh, you're good.
The one place that I'll camp out would have been the biggest game of the season for Baylor last year, right? He has one last chance in the Sugar Bowl to go out and prove to the entire country that, hey, I'm a guy, should be a first 3-round draft pick, second round draft. I should be somewhere on that board. And it's your last shot to play for the Baylor Bears. So there's there are a lot of things on the line in a Sugar Bowl game where you're playing with kind of a half of a quarterback. Your offense isn't great. Baylor only puts up 21 points in that game, not all of them being offensive. And there is JT Woods with 2 interceptions in the biggest game of the year. And so that, I think, being his I don't want to say, again, it wasn't a breakout game by any means. The progression of the season, you're like,
his swan song for sure, though.
Yeah, JT Woods is here. And you're right. It's the last game of the year. And you're like, you look at this too. If I remember right, you correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be wrong. I think he had an interception against Oklahoma State. So it'd be 3 interceptions in the Big 12 championship and the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
Talk about a gamer. That right there, I think, says a lot about JT Woods and what he brings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to come up in that game, right, in your last collegiate game, and a lot of dudes are skipping it, right? I mean, a lot of dudes, he knew he had something still to prove, and he could still improve his stock, and you're not going to do much better than 2 interceptions in one of the biggest games, probably your biggest game in your collegiate career. But I think that's been kind of a trend with Baylor, though, especially this year, though, is those defenders and how they play. I mean, obviously one of the best units total in the NCAA. They were one of the best defenses for sure. But they also had a few other guys drafted too. He wasn't the only defender drafted. He wasn't even the highest defender drafted from Baylor this season. So what do you think it is about Dave Aranda's defense, who came in a couple years ago from the SEC, from LSU, right, being that defensive-minded guy that's getting these players prepared for the next level and also giving these NFL coaches something to look at and be like, okay, I see how it translates?
I think it was Sean McVay said last week that Dave Aranda is the truth. That he knew that if he was going to get a guy from Dave Aranda, that he would be NFL ready, because Dave Aranda is building NFL style defenses. He's different, man. I don't. If you haven't been around Dave or seen his press conferences, you'd probably want to take a nap after the first one you watch. You're like, this guy talks really slow and methodically, but he's got a knack for the game in a way that's really special. So from an X's and O's standpoint, he's a genius, but he's also really a stickler about building SEC style defenses in a Big 12 that doesn't really see that. A great example of that, our strength and conditioning coordinator at Baylor is Vic Valoria, who is in the same position at Florida State when they went to the national championship, right?
Yep.
And if you look back and remember, they beat Auburn, who is an SEC team, SEC offense and defense. And so he had built, right, Vic Valoria had grown to the physicality of that Florida State program to match those SEC schools. That's what Dave Aranda, one of his first hires, was, I want to build that kind of program at Baylor. So I'll say this. Had Baylor gone with a different head coach, let's throw out like a Jeff Prom, right? I don't think JT Woods is a third-round draft pick. I don't know if he gets drafted. Terrel Bernard, Jalen Pitre, I don't think their progression
it can happen like that, yeah.
Right. I think a lot of this has to be attributed to where Dave Aranda, as a just defensive guru, was placing these players in the right spots where they needed to be to maximize their potential. And not only that, building them into bigger, faster, stronger. Like, this is, let's build an SEC defense in the middle of the Big 12 and see what happens. And what happened was 12-2 and a Sugar Bowl victory over Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it doesn't get much better than that. You got to love that, right? I mean, one thing that rookies can't control is where they will land, what team's going to draft them. But JT Woods is going into a really, really good situation here with the Chargers. How excited are you that he ended up on what should be a really, really good defense this year? And, you know, he gets to team up with guys like Derwin James.
Yeah, one of the first things that I remember from him being drafted was a video that his girlfriend actually posted. Like I said, I worked with her and seeing just how excited she's a track runner. So it just kind of makes sense, right? Somebody tweeted out, was like, she's almost as fast as he is, which is not that far off from the truth. And so getting to see her reaction, she was at a track meet, like she was competing.
Oh, crazy.
Which I just find so neat.
Wow.
And couldn't be at his draft night celebration, but just that reaction from both of them, and seeing how excited he was. Like, here's the deal, guys. It's Russian roulette on draft night, because you could be a first round pick and go to the Jets, and it's like, all right, well, I had fun while I played football. You know, it was great while it lasted.
Sure.
And you know, JT Woods ended up in a really, really solid spot. You're going to LA too, which is in the nicest, newest facility in NFL football as well. You're really going to see, I think, a player that will thrive in a place like Los Angeles, number one, because I think he has that wherewithal. There are some guys that would sink. You know, take a tight end from Iowa that grew up in Iowa City, and they go to LA, and it's like, oh, well, that's not good. And JT Woods is just not that guy. So he's got it there, and so I think that's going to help a lot. But you plug him into a team that's already good, I think that just makes a good player even better. Plug it into a team that's bad, and you got to go lead the way. Like, look, Derek Stingley Jr., good luck. Best of luck to you. I'm sure you'll do great. Sure. But I think at a guy like JT Woods, third-round draft pick, a safety, that it'll behoove him to be a part of a Chargers team that already has it put together.
Yeah, and I mean, how tough is that if you're coming in as a third-round pick? If you're expected to be the savior, right, and be the starter right away and all those things, it's sink or swim, and you'll find out really quickly. But you also might have just buried a dude who could have come along at a different pace and maybe ended up being a really good player for you. But we all know how much the Chargers, Brandon Staley, Tom Telesco, they care about the high character guys, right? And it seems like that's what they're getting in JT Woods, and also just getting a guy that fills a bunch of their needs. They needed speed on the back end. They needed a guy who could take the ball away. And I mean, as much as, you know, some of those balls tipped into his hands, right? And that can just be luck at times. Like, it is also a skill, like being so aware, having the awareness to get these tip balls and do all these things that he was able to do at Baylor and change a lot of these games. Like you just can't teach to some dudes who are just having, brick hands and balls hitting the ground. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what JT Woods can do. And we'll definitely have Drake Toll on to talk about him after his rookie season to check in and, kind of see how he's progressed in year one. But Drake, thank you so much, man. Thanks for waking up, coming on the show, coming through in your busy schedule and telling us a little bit about JT Woods, man. You crushed it.
Guys, like I said, it's 4:00 in my mental clock, 4:00 in the afternoon in my mental clock. I'm going to go chug my third energy drink of the day and I don't know, do some skateboarding or whatever the college kids are doing now. But thank you for having me on today. Always a blast. I love any opportunity I get to talk NFL football, especially former Baylor Bears. So thanks for offering me that platform. And you guys, I think you're really going to like JT Woods. If you haven't already listened to interviews of him at Baylor or even now, please go do it. It's special. Well, that'll do it for today's show, folks. Thanks for coming. We'll see you again on Monday as things ramp up in the baseball coaching search, as fewer and fewer teams are still alive in the NCAA. Who will it be as Baylor's next head man? Is it Texas State's Stephen Trout, who put a weird, almost eulogy-like thing out there on Twitter? Find out all of that and the latest on Monday's episode of Locked On. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Baylor.